Nexus Prime loomed against the stellar backdrop like a mechanical leviathan, its curved architecture reminiscent of a predator's maw. Dominic Vaughn stared through the viewport as their diplomatic shuttle approached the Interplanetary Council's fortress station. His reflection, gaunt face, military short hair, and eyes that had seen too much, ghosted against the stars. "We have clearance to dock," announced Captain Lyra, her blue-tinged skin pulsing with anxiety. "Ambassador Vaughn, I must again advise against this course of action. The Council has already decided Earth's fate." Dominic turned from the vista. "That's precisely why I'm here, Captain, to ensure they decide correctly." His calm demeanor betrayed nothing of the storm within. 3 months ago, the Proxima incident had left 37 alien delegates dead in an explosion that Council propaganda had swiftly blamed on Earth's primitive aggression. The fact that Earth had only joined the Galactic Union 8 months prior, that they had everything to lose and nothing to gain, seemed irrelevant to the Council's narrative. "The hearing is merely a formality," Lyra continued. "No species has ever successfully defended themselves once the Council has determined guilt." Dominic nodded. "There's always a first time." The shuttle docked with a pneumatic hiss. As the airlock cycled, Dominic adjusted his formal diplomatic attire, midnight blue with Earth's emblem, the simplified image of a rising sun over mountains on his right shoulder. A symbolic choice. Earth emerging from darkness into the galactic community. Now, that symbolism felt bitterly ironic. He was alone. The rest of Earth's diplomatic corps had been recalled when sanctions began, leaving Dominic as the sole representative. Not that it mattered. In the aftermath of the Proxima incident, Earth stood alone, guilty until proven innocent in a court that had never before reversed its verdict. The council chamber was a vast amphitheater, designed to intimidate with its sheer scale and acoustics that amplified every word from the elevated council seats, while diminishing voices from the defendant's platform. 7 council members sat like gods in judgment, each representing one of the founding species of the Galactic Union. Their faces, some humanoid, others utterly alien, were impassive. High Administrator Vex, a Taurian with gray skin and 6 eyes arranged in a hexagonal pattern, gazed down at Dominic. "Ambassador Vaughn of Earth, you stand before this council to hear the findings of our investigation into the terrorist attack at Proxima Station. The evidence points conclusively to Earth's involvement." Dominic's voice remained steady. "High Administrator, my government requests the opportunity to present countervailing evidence." A murmur rippled through the gathered spectators. Hundreds of diplomats, journalists, and representatives from worlds across the galaxy had come to witness Earth's trial. "No," Earth's sentencing. "Evidence has already been evaluated," Vex replied dismissively. "The Council has decided. Earth will face complete sanctions, demilitarization, and reparations to be determined. We are not unsympathetic to your young civilization, which is why we've chosen punitive measures rather than expulsion from the Galactic Union." Magnanimous tyranny, Dominic thought. Aloud, he said, "Under Article 52 of the Unification Treaty, Earth is entitled to a full hearing." "A hearing which you are receiving now," Vex replied. "Our investigation found residue from Earth-manufactured explosives, communications indicating Earth operatives were present prior to detonation, and, most damningly, the confession of an Earth national who admitted to planting the device. Lies, all of them. The confession had come from a tourist who disappeared into council custody, only to emerge weeks later with a blank stare and rehearsed words. The communications were tourist messages taken out of context. The explosive residue matched common terraforming materials used throughout the galaxy. But the council wasn't interested in facts. This was political theater designed to make a statement. Newcomers to the galactic stage would submit to established powers. Dominic's gaze swept the chamber, noting the sea of hostile faces. Then his attention fixed on a figure standing in shadow behind Vex's throne-like seat. A tall, lithe being with skin the color of burnished copper and eyes that gleamed like cold stars. She wore ceremonial armor that hugged her athletic form, and a cloak of deepest purple hung from her shoulders. Salira, the council's enforcer, their gladiator. their executioner. For 3 centuries, she had been the council's instrument of justice, undefeated in combat, incorruptible in loyalty. The whispers about her were part myth, part nightmare. That she belonged to the Kyrian species, a race of warriors the council had saved from extinction through vassalage. That her lifespan had been artificially extended to preserve her skills. That she had personally slain over 500 challengers who dared oppose the council's will. Dominic knew then that standard diplomacy would fail. The trial was rigged, the sentence predetermined. Earth would become another vassal state, stripped of its military, its resources plundered under the guise of reparations. Unless he changed the game entirely. High Administrator, Dominic said clearly, his voice echoing through the chamber. Earth invokes Statute 947. The words fell like a bomb. Vex's 6 eyes blinked in rapid succession. The other council members leaned forward. A hush descended on the audience, followed by a crescendo of whispers. Statute 947 has not been invoked in 73 years, said Councillor Talia, the Andari representative, her translucent skin flushing with surprise. Nevertheless, it remains in your charter, Dominic replied. The right of combat challenge. When a species believes justice has been denied through conventional channels, they may request trial by combat. One champion against the council's chosen warrior. Behind Vex, Salira stepped forward slightly, her expression unreadable but her posture suddenly alert. Vex's voice dropped dangerously. You realize what you're asking? Earth must provide a champion to face our chosen combatant. The outcome determines your planet's fate. Understand perfectly, Dominic said. And who will stand as Earth's champion? Vex asked, a cruel smile playing at his lipless mouth. We have no record of exceptional warriors among your kind. Dominic squared his shoulders. I will. The declaration sent shock waves through the chamber. Vex's smile widened into something predatory. You? A diplomat. I was special forces before I was a diplomat, Dominic replied evenly. I volunteered to represent Earth. What he didn't say, that his military career had ended after an ambush in Nigeria left him with a titanium femur and months of rehabilitation. That his combat skills, while once exceptional by human standards, would be laughably inadequate against a being like Salira. But he had something more valuable than combat prowess. He had a plan. The Council accepts your invocation of Statute 947, Vex announced, barely containing his satisfaction. Combat will take place in 7 standard cycles. The Council nominates Salira of Kyrian as its champion. As the words were spoken, Salira's eyes met Dominic's across the vast chamber. In that moment, something passed between them, a recognition perhaps, or maybe just the silent acknowledgement between predator and prey. Earth's fate now hung on an impossible duel, and Dominic had just volunteered to die. The training facility allocated to Dominic was sparse, a converted cargo bay with basic combat equipment and barely functioning environmental controls. The message was clear. The Council considered his preparation a formality, not a necessity. Your stance is all wrong, growled Krya, demonstrating the proper position for the 5th time. The former Centauri fighter had volunteered to train Dominic after hearing about his challenge. Whether from pity or morbid fascination, he couldn't tell. Dominic adjusted, feeling muscles protest. Better, less terrible, Krya conceded. Her forearms moved in fluid coordination as she demonstrated a defensive maneuver. Salira favors rapid combinations, 2 strikes to distract, followed by a kill move. You must learn to recognize the pattern. Have you fought her? Dominic asked, wiping sweat from his brow. Krya's expression darkened. Once, 20 years ago, I represent the only opponent she didn't kill. She pulled aside her tunic to reveal a jagged scar running from shoulder to hip. She spared me because I yielded before the final blow. The Council was displeased with her mercy, yet they kept her as their champion, because no one else has ever come close to defeating her. Krya tossed him a practice weapon, a staff weighted to simulate a gravity blade. Again, as they sparred, Dominic became aware of a presence at the observation window high above. A flash of copper skin and purple fabric. Salira, watching silently, Your audience has arrived, Krya muttered, following his gaze. Why would she observe my training? Dominic asked between control breaths. To assess her prey. Krya landed a blow that would have been fatal with a real weapon. Or perhaps she's curious about the human foolish enough to challenge her. Later, exhausted and bruised, Dominic returned to his temporary quarters. He found a message waiting on his comm unit, anonymous but unmistakable in its origin. North Observation Deck. Midnight station time. Come alone. When he arrived at the deserted observation deck, Salira was already there, her back to him as she gazed out at the stars. Without armor, dressed in simple civilian attire, she seemed almost vulnerable, though Dominic knew better. You fight poorly, she said without turning around. Her voice was melodic, but with an edge like fractured crystal. I'm aware, Dominic replied. Then why challenge me? You must know the outcome. Finally, she turned to face him. Up close, her alienness was even more apparent. Her eyes were multifaceted like a dragonfly's, her skin had a subtle pattern reminiscent of scales, and her movements possessed an uncanny fluidity. Because sometimes the fight matters more than the outcome, he said. Philosophy will not save you in the arena. No, but it might save Earth. Salira studied him with those strange, beautiful eyes. You believe your death will somehow benefit your planet? I believe the truth has power, Dominic said carefully. Even against the Council. Something flickered across her face, doubt, perhaps a recognition. The Council dispensed with truth centuries ago, human. They deal in power and perception. And you? What are you dealing? Her answer was unexpected in its rawness. Survival. She moved closer, and Dominic resisted the urge to step back. Despite her lethal reputation, something about her drew him, a kinship of isolation perhaps. They were both alone in this vast political machine, serving purposes not entirely of their choosing. Why did you really come to watch me train? He asked. Salira's gaze was penetrating. In 300 years, you are the first diplomat to stand as champion. The first to face me knowing you cannot win. I wish to understand. And do you? No, she admitted. But I begin to see why your species concerns the Council. You are unpredictable. Is that a compliment? The ghost of a smile touched her lips. Observation, not judgment. She turned to leave, then paused. If you withdraw your challenge, they might show leniency. We both know that's not true. Salira nodded, acknowledging the truth of his words. Then I will see you in the arena, Dominic Vaughn, and I will grant you an honorable death. After she left, Dominic remained at the viewport, staring at the distant pinprick of light that was Earth's sun. Everything depended on his next move, and on whether the seed of doubt he'd planted in Salira would grow. The following days passed in a blur of training and clandestine meetings. Dominic made connections with sympathetic aliens who had their own reasons to question the Council's absolute authority. Information was gathered, plans laid, all while he continued his hopeless preparation for combat. Salira returned to watch his training 3 more times. On her 4th visit, Krya deliberately left early, leaving them alone in the facility. Your technique improves, Salira noted, descending from the observation platform with inhuman grace. Though not enough. Perhaps you could offer pointers, since you'll be killing me anyway, Dominic suggested, only half joking. To his surprise, she picked up a practice weapon. Your guard is too low against a taller opponent. They began to spar, and the difference in their abilities was immediately apparent. Where Dominic had to consciously think through each move, Salira flowed like water, her attacks and defenses seamlessly integrated. Yet she tempered her speed and strength, turning what could have been a humiliating demonstration into something almost like teaching. Why are you helping me? Dominic asked during a pause. Salira's expression remained unreadable. A worthy opponent deserves respect, even when the fight is fixed. Her movements faltered slightly, the first imperfection he'd seen in her form. All fights in the Council arena are fixed, human, just not in the way you imagine. This cryptic statement hung between them as they continued their deadly dance. Gradually, Dominic began to notice patterns in her fighting style, rhythms he could predict. Still impossible to counter, but no longer completely mysterious. You were military before becoming a diplomat, she said during another break. Not a question. Dominic nodded. Special operations. I was good by human standards. What changed? He hesitated, then rolled up his pant leg to reveal the seam where flesh met advanced prosthetic. Ambush. Lost the leg below the knee. Gained a desk job. Salira studied the prosthetic with clinical interest. Yet you function well. Human adaptability, he said with a grim smile. We're good at making do with broken parts. As are the Kyrian, she replied, and for the first time, emotion colored her voice, a deep sadness that surprised him. Your people, Dominic said softly. The council records say they rescued the Kyrian from extinction. Salira's laugh was bitter. Is that what their histories claim? They did not rescue us. They conquered us, then rewrote our story to cast themselves as saviors. Why continue serving them, then? Her multifaceted eyes seemed to darken. Because 20,000 Kyrians still live, sequestered on a council-controlled world. Their lives are the chains that bind me. The revelation struck Dominic like a physical blow. Salira wasn't just the council's champion. She was their hostage, fighting to ensure her people's survival. I shouldn't have told you this, she said, suddenly guarded again. Forget it. I can't, Dominic replied. And I don't think you want me to. Their eyes locked, and something electric passed between them. Understanding, perhaps, or the dangerous beginnings of trust. We all serve something greater than ourselves, she finally said, even when we question its worthiness. As the day of combat approached, their clandestine meetings continued. No longer just training sessions, but conversations that stretched into the night. Dominic learned about Kyrian culture, their warrior philosophy that valued honor above victory. Salira, in turn, seemed fascinated by Earth's chaotic history, its contradictions and resilience. Your species fights amongst itself constantly, she observed during one such conversation. Yet you've survived. Maybe because of that. Not despite it, Dominic suggested. Conflict forces adaptation. Or extinction, she countered. Yet here we are, both of us, survivors of our own histories. Something was changing between them. A connection forming that transcended their assigned roles as adversaries. Dominic found himself studying her face not just as a combatant, but as a woman. Alien, yes, but with expressions and emotions he recognized. When she smiled, a rare occurrence, her entire face transformed, revealing a person long hidden behind the persona of the council's champion. The night before the combat, they met one final time on the observation deck. Tomorrow, one of us dies, Salira said without preamble. It doesn't have to end that way, Dominic replied carefully. She turned to him, sudden anger flaring. You think I have a choice? If I fail to kill you, my people suffer. If you somehow defeat me, Earth remains free, but the Kyrian pay the price. What if we could free both? Dominic asked quietly. Salira went very still. Explain. He took a deep breath and laid out his plan. The evidence he'd gathered about the Council's manipulation of the Proxima incident, the alliance he'd built among disaffected species, and most crucially, the role Salira would need to play. It's treason, she whispered when he finished. It's justice, he countered. For Earth, for Kyrian, for every species the Council has manipulated through fear and manufactured conflict. You ask me to betray an oath that has defined my existence for centuries. I'm asking you to honor a higher oath to your people's true freedom, not just their survival. Salira turned away, her internal conflict evident in the tension of her shoulders. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. If we fail, we die anyway, Dominic said simply. But at least we die for something that matters. Slowly, she turned back to him. In a gesture he now recognized as deeply significant in Kyrian culture, she extended her right hand, palm upward, showing the intricate pattern of scars that recorded her victories. Then let us write a new history, human. As their hands met, 5 fingers clasping 3, Dominic felt the weight of 2 worlds settling on their shoulders. And something else, a connection that neither of them had sought, but both now silently acknowledged. Tomorrow, they would enter the arena as enemies. Tonight, they were co-conspirators, and perhaps, in some unspoken way, something more. The combat arena was a massive circular platform suspended over a seemingly bottomless shaft, a deliberate design choice that eliminated any possibility of escape. 50,000 spectators filled the surrounding tiers, their collective breath creating a constant background roar. Above them all, in a private box draped with ceremonial banners, sat the 7 council members. Dominic entered from the eastern portal, dressed in minimal combat armor that gleamed dully under the harsh lights. A murmur ran through the crowd at his appearance. Many had placed bets on him, failing to appear at all. From the western portal emerged Sci-Fi, resplendent in her full ceremonial combat gear. Unlike Dominic's utilitarian equipment, hers was designed for spectacle as well as function. Purple and gold armor plates over a form-fitting bodysuit, her clan markings prominently displayed across her breastplate. A collective gasp rose from the audience. For many, this was their first glimpse of the legendary warrior. High Administrator Vex rose from his seat, arms raised for silence. We gather to witness trial by combat, as invoked under Statute 947. Earth stands accused of the Proxima atrocity. Should their champion fall, they accept all penalties decreed by this council. Should they prevail, he paused, allowing a ripple of derisive laughter to spread through the crowd. All charges shall be dismissed. A ceremonial gong sounded, its deep reverberation filling the arena. Dominic and Sci-Fi approached the center of the platform, stopping 3 paces apart. As tradition dictated, they bowed to each other, enemies offering respect before bloodshed. "Remember the plan?" Dominic murmured, his lips barely moving. Sci-Fi gave an imperceptible nod. "Third exchange," she whispered back. The gong sounded again. Combat had begun. They circled each other cautiously, weapons at the ready. Dominic wielded a pair of short blades, while Sci-Fi carried her signature weapon, a gravity staff that could alter its effective mass and momentum mid-strike. Their first exchange was cautious, testing defenses, establishing rhythms. Dominic attacked with a flurry of blows that Sci-Fi parried easily, then countered with a sweep that forced him to retreat. The crowd roared its approval. The second exchange intensified. Sci-Fi moved with blinding speed, her staff becoming a blur of motion. Dominic defended desperately, using every technique Krya had taught him, yet still receiving glancing blows that left him staggering. Blood trickled from a cut above his eye. "Convincing enough?" Sci-Fi asked during a momentary clinch. "Very," Dominic grunted, pushing away to reset his stance. The third exchange began with Dominic launching a reckless attack, leaving his right side exposed, a fatal mistake against an opponent of Sci-Fi's caliber. The crowd saw the opening simultaneously, and a collective intake of breath preceded the killing blow. Sci-Fi's staff arced toward Dominic's unprotected ribs with devastating force. It connected with a sickening thud, driving the air from his lungs and sending him crashing to the deck. As he fell, Dominic's hand pressed against the concealed device at his belt, activating the transmission that would broadcast their compiled evidence to every communication system on Nexus Prime. Sci-Fi stood over him, staff raised for the finishing strike. Their eyes met in a moment of perfect understanding. "For our people," she said, loud enough for the nearby audio pickups to capture. Then, instead of delivering the death blow, she turned toward the council box and hurled her staff with impossible precision. It embedded itself in the ornate paneling just centimeters from Vex's head. "No more lies," she shouted, her voice amplified by the arena's acoustics. Throughout the station, displays that had been showing the combat suddenly switched to data streams. Internal council communications, classified reports, witness testimonies, all revealing the truth behind the Proxima incident. The council had engineered the explosion themselves, sacrificing 37 lives to frame Earth and justify increased control over the newest member of the Galactic Union. The evidence was irrefutable, transmitted directly to tens of thousands of personal devices. The stunned silence that fell over the arena was broken only by Vex's enraged roar. "Seize them! Kill them both!" Security forces began converging on the arena floor, but they moved with obvious reluctance. The evidence was too damning, the deception too clear. Dominic struggled to his feet, painfully aware of the very real damage Solyra's blow had inflicted. "People of the Galactic Union," he called out, his voice strained but carrying, "you've been lied to, not just about Earth, but about countless incidents the Council has manufactured to maintain power. Today we expose the truth." Solyra stood beside him, her posture defiant. "For 3 centuries, I have been the instrument of their false justice. No more. The Kyrian will no longer be hostages to Council tyranny." The growing murmur among the spectators swelled into a roar. Anger, shock, and the dangerous sound of long-suppressed questions finally finding voice. Vex's face contorted with fury. "This changes nothing. Guards, execute the traitors." But the security forces had stopped advancing. On the arena floor, Krya and several other aliens who had been part of Dominic's clandestine network emerged from service tunnels, forming a protective circle around the 2 champions. "It changes everything," Dominic replied, his voice now carried by the same system broadcasting the evidence. "Because now everyone knows." In the pandemonium that followed, representatives from dozens of species demanded emergency hearings. Council members attempted to flee, but found their escape routes blocked by their own security forces, many of whom had family members among the Proxima victims. Vex alone remained defiant. As the other council members were detained, he activated a hidden control panel in his private box. "If I fall, the Kyrian fall with me," he snarled. "The purge protocols are now active. In 12 hours, their containment habitats will depressurize. Only I can stop it." He had played his final card, the dead man switch that had kept Solyra in line for centuries. Solyra launched herself toward the council box with inhuman speed, scaling the partition in seconds. Guards moved to intercept her, but too slowly. She reached Vex, her hand, closing around his throat. "The access codes," she demanded, her voice deadly quiet. "Now, kill me, and your people die." Vex gasped. "Solyra, wait," Dominic called, having followed her up to the box. "We need him alive. He deserves death," she hissed, her multifaceted eyes reflecting Vex's terrified face. "Yes," Dominic agreed, "but not at the cost of justice, real justice." He placed a hand on her arm. "Your people need you to make the choice their champion couldn't make for 300 years. For a moment, it seemed she would ignore him. Then, slowly, her grip relaxed. "You will deactivate the purge," she told Vex, "and then you will face the judgment of the peoples you have betrayed." Security officers, now answering to the emergency coalition forming among the Union representatives, took Vex into custody. Under close supervision, he deactivated the purge protocols, his 6 eyes burning with hatred. As Vex was led away, the arena, which had been designed for spectacles of violence, became the impromptu site of a revolution. Representatives from dozens of worlds converged, demanding investigations, reforms, a complete restructuring of galactic governance. Amid the chaos, Dominic found himself growing lightheaded from his injuries. Solyra caught him before he could fall. "You need medical attention," she said, concern evident in her voice. "Worth it," he managed, attempting a smile despite the pain. "We did it." Her expression softened. "Yes, but the harder work begins now." In the days that followed, a temporary governing council was established, with representatives from Earth and Kyrian prominently included. The evidence Dominic and Solyra had compiled led to the discovery of countless other council manipulations. Conflicts engineered, species set against each other, all to maintain a power structure that benefited the founding worlds at the expense of newer members. Dominic found himself appointed as Earth's senior representative to the Transitional Authority, a role he accepted with reluctance, preferring action to politics. Still, he recognized the necessity of his presence during this fragile period of reformation. Solyra, meanwhile, departed immediately for the Kyrian containment world with a liberation fleet. When she returned 2 weeks later, she brought news of her people's freedom after centuries of effective imprisonment. They met on the now familiar observation deck, Earth visible as a blue dot in the vast field of stars. My people have elected to establish a new colony, Solyra said without preamble. Away from council space, on a world where we can rebuild our culture without interference. Dominic nodded, ignoring the unexpected pang her words caused. A wise choice. Earth would welcome Kyrian delegations, should your people wish to establish diplomatic relations. Is that an official invitation, Ambassador Vaughn? There was something almost teasing in her tone, a side of her personality that seemed to emerge more frequently since their victory. Partially official, he admitted, partially personal. They stood in companionable silence, watching the stars. The distance between them, physical, cultural, biological, remained vast. Yet something had formed in the crucible of their shared struggle, something neither had anticipated. Will you lead them? Dominic finally asked. The Kyrian colony? Solyra shook her head. No, I have been a weapon for too long to be a builder. My people need healing I cannot provide. She turned to face him fully. The Transitional Authority has requested I serve as head of the Investigation Commission to examine other council abuses and ensure justice for all affected species. You're staying, Dominic said, surprised at the relief that washed over him. For now, she confirmed. There is work to be done here. There always is, he agreed. Exposing the truth was just the beginning. Solyra moved closer, studying his face with those strange, beautiful eyes. In 300 years of combat, you are the only opponent who never truly fought me, yet somehow defeated me completely. We defeated them, not each other, Dominic corrected gently. Yes, her hand found his, alien fingers intertwining with human ones. Perhaps that is the lesson here. Some battles aren't meant to be fought alone. Outside the viewport, the stars continued their eternal dance, unconcerned with the politics of the beings who traveled among them, yet bearing witness to a moment of connection that transcended the boundaries of world and species. What comes next? Dominic asked softly. Solyra's lips curved in a smile that transformed her face. Something new, she said. Something neither of us has fought before. As their fingers tightened around each other's, Dominic reflected that some challenges were worth facing, not for worlds or principles, but for the simple, profound possibility of understanding another heart across the gulf of stars. Nexus Prime continued its orbit, a mechanical leviathan now shaken to its core. Within its halls, the foundations of a new order were being laid, one built on truth rather than manipulation, cooperation rather than dominance. And in a quiet corner overlooking the galaxy, two former enemies contemplated a future neither had dared imagine. One where they stood not as representatives of their species, but simply as themselves, two beings who had found each other in the vastness of space and chosen to walk forward together into the unknown.